about your older sister?
Well, starting with my older sister, I mean, she was kind of always got what she wanted in the house. She was the oldest one, first one. So she didn't have much to do with the family itself. But there was 9 children in our family. We always had boarders living in the house. I mean, in other words, my mother would always have people that she was making meals for, and she was busy all the time cooking. This house that we lived in was on Division Street in Detroit, on it was between Hastings and Antwine. So there was let's say, 9 children, my mother and father, 2 boarders. So there was 9, 11, 13 people living in this one house. It had a 2 bedrooms. It had 2 bedrooms downstairs, it had 2 bedrooms upstairs, with 2 double beds in each room. The original house had, when we first moved in there, had gas jets. There was no electricity. When I was there, when I was born, we did have inside plumbing. We had a fruit cellar in the dining room, which was a brick wall dug out underneath the house with a trapdoor under the dining room table. And during the winter, my father would go to the Eastern Market, which was maybe about 5-10 minutes away, and he would order 75 bushels of potatoes for the winter, about 20 bushels of onions, and we would store it in the basement for the whole winter.
How old were you when Minnie was left and was married?
Pardon?
How old were you when Minnie got married and left the house?
I was 8 years old.
Okay.
She was 20 when she got married.
So tell me some of your early memories of Sauce and Soda. As when Nate first started the store, you were just a youngster. But tell me some of your earlier memories of the store.
Well, this first store, like I say, was a store on Superior and Hastings. And they had it was just like a stand. In other words, there was
You know what kiosk is?
just like a Dairy Queen is now, with the window that opens up and they just served ice cream and drinks right from the window. There was nobody walked into the store. It was just on the outside. After that, he bought the store on Theodore and Hastings, which had a fountain. It had 2 tables. Those, what do you call those tables? The round tables, with the chairs, the ice cream parlor chairs. And he was there for quite a number of years. And from there, the only time I worked there in the store was, like I say, during the time before the Jewish holidays. They had some. They used to have New Year's cards. They used to sell fancy New Year's cards, and they used to set up a stand outside the door, and I would sit there and sell these New Year's cards for about a week or 2 weeks before the holiday, and that was maybe once or twice a year. That's about all they had that. And then from there, they moved to 12th and Gladstone. During my senior year in high school, I went to Northern High School. I used to go to school from 8:30 till 12:30. Leave the school. There used to be I used to get on a Claremont streetcar, which was 2 blocks away, take this from Woodward to 12th Street. Then I'd walk to the store, started work at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And I was working there from 1 o'clock to 11 o'clock at night. And that's, let's say, 5 days, 6 days a week. Generally, the only time there was a lot of business in the store was during the evenings. In those days, I was the waiter, the order taker, the
Busboy.
making up the sodas or the ice cream cones or the sundaes and delivering it and then cleaning up afterwards. That was my job the rest of the time.
What was it like working for Nathan? What was he like?
What was he like? Pretty strict.
So, let me start. You can have you say Nathan was a strict boss or something so that we know.
Well, he had to work. I mean, in other words, there's no slack time. I mean, the only slack time you had was actually maybe during the day where, there was not a lot of people coming in. I mean, it was it did have slow periods where you just stood around and just waited for customers to come in. But during the evening, there was no slack time because there was people coming and going all the time, and you had to be hustling. You just couldn't stand still and do nothing.
Describe for me the particularly 12th Street store. Describe some of your memories of what it looked like, the layout, what it smelled like. What do you remember about the store?
Well, they had a fountain. As you came in the store, it had a cigar stand, a cigarette stand, right as you came in the door. Then it had a fountain with all the stools. Then they had around the side of the store, they had these booths. And then in the store, they had 2 or 3, 4 different tables, that you sit up beside the booths.
Menus? Would they have board?
Menus? No menus.
No,
You just was on either on the over the counter. They have a list of different stuff, so you just read off. I mean, people know in other words, when they came in, you go over and what do you want? Either a soda or sundae, what kind of ice cream and everything. It was just in your head. I mean, you didn't mark down any. There was no order. I mean, there was no written. Then you just went and filled the order and came back, and the next customer the same thing. You just repeated the same thing.
Now, was it like a mandatory, or I shouldn't say mandatory, but were you sort of obligated to work in the store, or were you lucky to have this job, working in your family store? How did you see it when you were a kid?
It was just this job. That's all. It wasn't mandatory. Nobody had to work. If you didn't want to work, you didn't work. But I mean, everybody at my point at the time, I mean, whatever job I could get, I would get. In fact, before this time, I mean, I was working at the ballpark during the summers, selling at Dave Field. I was 14 years old, 15 years old. I would go down to when the Tigers were playing at Naven Field. We used to go outside in front of the doors, and they had whoever ran the concession used to pick out different people to go in. You would pick you out, and you walk in there, and my job was selling pop. You know how you sold pop in those days? You had an iron crate. You put 20 bottles of pop in this iron crate. You put ice on the top of the bottle so to keep it cold. And you walk up and down the stands, and you'd say ice, cold drinks, and you just at that time they used to sell. When we would sell 20 bottles of pop, you go back and you'd go back for a refill. You kept 30 cents of it, and $1.70 you turned into the concession. So every summer I worked there. So when I was going to school, my senior year, I had all this time, and I just started working the candy store.
Now, I know my father was just a youngster when you worked there. Were there always family up and down the stairs? Or did you go upstairs for meals? Well, how did that
Just
work?
for supper.
Tell me about that. You were in,
Well, Minnie used to cook the meals upstairs, mostly fried. I mean, she had like a fast food. I mean, she never, she. ne- I don't think she ever planned out any menus. I mean, whatever was the easiest way to do it, that's the way she cooked. So we'd go up for supper and have supper, and then come down and start working again. And then I would stay in the store until 11 o'clock at night. At 11 o'clock at night, I'd walk back to the streetcar, back to the Claremont streetcar, which I would take from 12th Street to Woodward and catch another streetcar to go back home. And at that time, transportation was very good. Streetcars ran every 10, 15 minutes. You didn't have to wait any. Not a lot of people had cars, so they used the streetcars mostly for transportation.
so the store wasn't really in your neighborhood, so you didn't
No.
see your friends wouldn't come in or kids
No.
that you knew.
There was nowhere near than our neighborhood. It was quite a way. We lived in a residential area on Harmon between Brush and Jenner, which was close to, let's say, a fancy neighborhood was Boston Boulevard or Chicago Boulevard. We lived about 3 or 4 blocks from there. Quite a nice residential area. But all the stores were either on 12th Street or other where the streetcars ran. There used to be a streetcar running on 12th Street. And when Minnie and Nate lived upstairs, when they moved from over the store, they moved up to Collingwood. It took them a couple of months to get used to the falling asleep because they didn't hear the streetcar running.
I had a question, I can't think of what I was gonna ask you. Oh, can't
How
remember.
about, look at Nancy when you
I'm
answer. How about Saturday night at the soda shop?
Saturday night,
Max described as 3 deep at the counter and you didn't even look up, just fire, fire, boom, 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 boom.
well, one thing, I didn't work Friday nights and Saturdays. I didn't work in the store. Saturday night, I used to come to work at sundown, which could be anywhere from 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock. And I would work from the time I came to the store until 12 o'clock on Saturday night, which was one of the busiest nights. And you're always hustling, people coming and going, and you had to keep moving just keep the customers happy. I mean, they didn't have to wait too long if they came in, sat down, then we went over and took the order, went, filled, came back, and clean up afterwards. And at that time, Nate and Max used to alternate nights sometimes in the store. Sometimes I would work with Max in the store and Nate was off. Sometimes I would work with Nate and Max was off. So there was always either Max or Nate at the same time as I was working there.
That's what I was gonna ask you. Were you ever left in charge on a Sunday, or
Pardon?
were you ever left in charge to close up, or were you?
Never. No, I wasn't in charge. I was just a worker.
Okay. What about the sauce? Did you ever have to cook the sauce in the back? Do you remember
Pardon?
the special syrup that they used to make in the back? Do you remember?
I didn't handle any of
didn't,
that.
you
To me, everything was all prepared. Nate used to do a lot of that. Minnie used to do some of it, I think, but Nate did most of the filling the counters and everything else. That wasn't my job. My job was just waiting on the customers, cleaning up, and that was it.
Was there only one way to do things? Was it Nate's way all the time, or?
That's right. There was only one way of doing it. It was supposed to be the right way.
Let me start over.
Yeah.
Tell me about
Nate, he was okay as a boss, but I mean he just was you just had to be on the job. I mean, you just couldn't stop working. I mean, in other words, when you're busy, you made sure that you wanted to work. So there was no question about not working or slacking down or anything like that. I mean, there was always enough work to do when customers were there.
Tell me a little bit more, we talked a little bit about it, but a little bit more about the family aspect of the business, that everybody around was family, and you saw your nieces and nephews on a regular basis. Tell me a little bit about how.
They didn't do it when I was working at the store. They were just little. I mean, they just came down maybe for an ice cream cone or something else. They never helped in the store. I mean, that was way before they were still going to. If I was in high school in 1928, they were just a little. Let's say how much difference in age?
But I mean, just the fact that there was only family worked there for the most part, and that it was, living upstairs.
Right.
And was that unusual? Was it like that in those days?
Mostly, yes. A lot of mom and pop stores. They worked downstairs and they lived upstairs.